Sounds great. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for joining tonight. I'm really excited to talk to you about our Motus research. We've been doing this for 2 years now, and I just thought it'd be great to kind of give a little quick update about some of the stuff that we've learned. So for today, I would just give you a real quick overview of the bird program here at Warner Park Nature Center, what's Motus and why we're doing it, and then a little bit about what we've learned about the thrush study. We have put transmitters on purple martins, but I'm going to save that for another day because there's so much to say about it. So this is going to be about the thrush research that we've been doing. So just to orient everyone, Warner Park Nature Center, Warner Parks is a over 3,000 acre metro park. It's located just 9 miles southwest of Nashville. And we are also, importantly for this, we're part of the Mississippi Migratory Flyway. So not that all birds follow this flyway, but generally this is how, when we think about migration, that's the definition of the flyway that we're in. So just to orient everybody a little bit. And at Warner Parks and at the Nature Center, a big focus of what we do is around education and engagement, public engagement. So for our bird program and for the bird banding station, we have school groups and summer camps that stop by and are able to observe bird banding. We have interns through some of the local universities like Lipscomb University and Tennessee State University. So a huge part of what we do is around public engagement. And for those of you who haven't been to the Nature Center, really close to the Nature Center, the large Nature Center building is the library, and this is where our bird banding, our bird program is located, is in the library. So I hope you'd stop by to see us sometime. So for the bird banding station and for our bird program, we, for the most part, have year-round weekly banding. So right now, we are in the middle of our winter banding that will take place in January and February. We have fall migration, spring migration banding. Those have all been going on. This is our 41st year for the bird banding station. We also have a summer breeding bird banding project called MAPS, which stands for Monitoring Avian Productivity and Survivorship. It's a partnership with the Institute for Bird Populations, and that's been ongoing for 32 years. So the good thing about this is we're really getting a sense of what birds are here throughout the year, and we're also being able to engage with the public throughout the year. The only months we really take off is we don't band during March for the most part. We've pretty much banded all of the winter birds, and most of the spring migration birds haven't started to come through. And then we usually take a break in December as well to focus on some other stuff. In addition to our bird banding station, we also have some species-specific research that we do. So in November and into December, we're looking at northern saw-whet owls and migration with the owls. In the summertime, we're looking at breeding success for barn swallows and purple martins, and also eastern bluebirds. We have a long-term bluebird nest box monitoring project that's been ongoing since 1936. It's the oldest bluebird nest box project in the US, as far as we've been able to figure out. We also have ruby-throated hummingbird migration that we do in August and September. And then the last thing, which sort of in many ways kicked off a lot of the Motus work, is we have been working for the last couple of years on getting all of the data from the last 41 years organized, entered, and put in a way where we can start to answer some questions around all of the data that we've collected. So as we were starting to do this, I happened to be looking through the data, and I noticed these birds called gray cheek thrushes. So this is The bird on the left is a Swainson's thrush, and the bird on the right is a gray-cheeked thrush. And what I noticed when I was looking at the data was that we'd captured 107 of these. We'd only had 4 within season captures. So, maybe we caught it on October 12th, and then we caught it again on October 17th. And, but for those just 4 recaptures that we had, the thing that just really jumped out at me was all 4 of those birds had gained significant amount of weight. Now, this is really important because many migratory songbirds, most of them in North America, will migrate at night and on their way from their breeding grounds and, northern US and Canada down to Central America or South America. And they're migrating at night. And what seems to happen from some research is that they're actually attracted to large urban centers. The glow from the city messes up with their navigation a little bit, and so they're attracted to these large cities. And then when it becomes when it starts to become daylight, they go ahead and they settle down in an area that's called a stopover site, and what you hope is that stopover site has good habitat where it's safe for the birds. It has food, natural native plants that are providing really good insects and berries, and that it has water for them. And so there are some places that on their way further south are really good migratory stopover sites because it provides all of those things. And then there's other places that aren't good. And so when you see that they're gaining weight like this, because what these birds will do is they'll migrate all night long, they'll deplete their resources, their fat resources that they're using for energy, and then they need to put gas in their tank again. So they're building up fat reserves in order to continue another nightly migration. And so I found this really interesting, and it made me wonder, I wonder if Warner Parks, we're pretty close to Nashville. I wonder if we're an important urban migratory stopover site. So how to answer that question, it can be challenging. So one of the ways to do it is with the use of radio transmitters. So transmitters have been used for decades. And what it is it's a device. There's all sorts of different ways to do this, but you put a device on a bird that's transmitting a signal, or it's collecting data, and then you have to be able to either, if it's collecting data, you have to be able to capture that bird again, or if it's a transmitter, you have to be able to get close enough so that you can detect that signal. So the issue with this, the problem with this is from a long time ago when I was in graduate school. This was one of my target species that I was researching. This is a black-billed magpie. Is that the batteries, to power those transmitters, batteries are heavy. And so the weight of the transmitter becomes a real limiting factor for what type of species you can put the transmitter on and how long that transmitter is going to last. And so at the time when I was doing my graduate work, these black-billed magpies were at the very lowest weight that we could put transmitters on, and they didn't last very long. The other issue is that then you have to be able to be close enough to be able to detect that transmission. So you're limited generally to your study area. And if those birds move outside of your study area, you don't know, even if the transmitter is working, you don't know where they are. And then it's expensive. And so I want to answer this question. The easiest way to answer this question about stopover duration is with transmitters, but I wasn't quite sure how to do that. So in 2018, several of us attended American Ornithological Society, Wilson Ornithological Society had a conference down in Chattanooga that we attended, and I went to a couple of different presentations where they talked about Motus. And I'd never heard of Motus before, but after I heard about it, I became very intrigued. And so what Motus is, it's these guys from Canada who said, all these issues around the study area. And if the bird leaves your study area, you don't know where that bird is. What if we collaborated and had a network where we were all using the receiver stations that used a handful of the same frequencies, and we could share that information? So if I tagged a bird up here and it flew over one of these receiver stations, I would be able to know about it. And so that's what they created. They did this in, I think it was around 2013 that they started working on this. So to me, this was the answer to get around the issue of what do you do if they leave the study area. And that's important for us because we need to know, if we're looking at stopover, when are they leaving our area? When are they no longer within Warner Parks? And so in 2019, these were the yellow dots represent the receiver stations that that were deployed at the time. And you can see it started up in Canada, up in, I think, Ontario, Quebec area. And so this is where the bulk of the receiver stations were. And so we, as you'll notice right here, this is the gap. The South and Tennessee, we were really missing being able to contribute to this network at all. So several of us got together, some folks from the Nature Conservancy, they were doing work on bats and had been radio tagging bats, and we were like, maybe we could make this work for their bat research. David Aborn down at UT Chattanooga had been doing some putting geolocators, which is a different type of data collection transmitter on birds. So we got together and we said, okay, let's make this, let's do this. And so we sort of half jokingly, but we said, let's call ourselves the Tennessee Motus Regional Collaborative Project. And so this was the very first meeting right here of us. And within a short amount of time, the Nature Conservancy was able to secure funding, and they put up the very first Motus receiver station in Tennessee at the Chestnut Mountain Bridgestone Preserve up near just south of Cookeville, north of Sparta, Tennessee. So we were really excited. We finally had a dot on the map. And then in 2020, we were able to receive some funding from the MAP Foundation, and I was able to recruit the help of a volunteer, Steve Gertner, who helped me figure out how to make all of this work. The thing about putting up these stations is there's nowhere really where you can go and just purchase everything. You have to know where to purchase the coax cables and the antennas and how to put it all together. And it was a huge, huge steep learning curve for me. But Steve, and with the help of, this is Corey Holliday from the Nature Conservancy, but with the two of them, they helped us do this. And so on July 13th, which is my birthday, we installed the receiver station at Warner Park Nature Center. And what's really cool about this is that I had mentioned before that Motus uses just a handful of radio frequencies. And so what we were able to do was we were able to install the first dual frequency receiver station. And so we were able to collect data from transmitters that were emitting at 166 megahertz and also at 434 megahertz. And so that was our little claim to fame. The following fall, with some additional funding and help from, this is Steve right here, we were able to install a second receiver station at the Harpeth Hills Golf Course. And so if you see this map right here, that yellow dot is at the Nature Center, and where that golfer is, that's the second receiver station right at the clubhouse. And what's really cool about this is that this dark green area here in the map, that's Warner Parks. And what these two receiver stations allowed us to do was to have complete coverage over the southern boundary of Warner Parks. And so the idea is a bird, anything flying north-south over Warner Parks should be able to be detected by these receiver stations. So this is what it looked like in 2019. And this is what it looked like in December of 2022. So kind of mind-blowing. And one of the things that happened was we were able, you can see Tennessee, look at all these stations here in Tennessee, woohoo. But we were also, people started finding out about our Tennessee Regional Motus Collaborative, and they wanted to join. And so we actually have expanded. So we're now called the Southeast Motus Working Group. So just a loose collaboration of folks. We get together once a month over Zoom, talk about projects we're working on and sharing best practices. I think we're up to about 10 states and I think close to 60 participants on the call now. And as you can see from this, this is really just taking off. And the reason for that is it is really kind of opening up the doors in terms of our understanding of bird movement and just ornithology, the study of birds in general. The other thing that's really cool about this is that we're starting to get more stations in Central America and in South America. So what I'm hoping is that I'll be able to show you this map in a few years, and this will be lit up too. Because the thing about migration and the things about our birds is that, they're with us for half the year, and the rest of the time they're down here. And so being able to understand what's going on down in their wintering grounds is going to be just as important. So this is really exciting. Oops. So here's where Motus overall, this is a screenshot I took yesterday, sort of it gets updated constantly. So Motus, there's Motus receiver stations in 34 countries, over 1,500 receiver stations. All of these different partners. There's been over 36,000 animals tagged, 310 species. And so this network is just building exponentially. And that's just better for everybody who's part of the network. So that's really exciting. So what have we, by putting up these receiver stations, have we learned anything from just the receiver stations, not even thinking about the thrush study? So for us, this is how we are able to go to motus.org, see what birds or what animals we're detecting. I can also go to this other website, the Cellular Tracking Technology, and figure out what we're detecting. So here's what we've done in the last 2 years. What our stations, by just installing them and becoming part of the Motus network and not really doing anything else, what we've had is we've had a tree swallow that was tagged up not far from Buffalo and in the Finger Lakes area. Was working its way south during migration. We've had Corey Holliday for the Nature Conservancy has been putting transmitters on bats. We've had 5 federally endangered gray bats foraging at night over Warner Parks. This fall, we had a purple martin that was radio tagged on the border of Delaware, Pennsylvania that flew through on its migration. And we've also had 2 birds, shorebirds called lesser yellowlegs that have been detected, one moving south and one moving north. So I just thought I would show you, this was a really cool one. This is one of the ones, it was radio tagged down in Colombia on April 19th. And then on May 1st, it was detected at 2 in the morning flying over Costa Rica. 36 hours later, it was detected flying over Texas in the afternoon at 3:30 in the afternoon. And then 14 hours later, it was detected at 7 in the morning at Warner Parks Nature Center. And based upon that graph that I showed you with the timing of everything, we could tell it spent about a half an hour, 45 minutes being detected. So, we don't know if it flew through the night and then dropped down in Warner Parks, took a little quick breather, and then continued on its way north. So this is just, I think, a kind of amazing to see. So getting back to our question, so that's all really neat stuff that we're able to contribute to other researchers' work. But what about the question that we had about Warner Parks as being an important migratory stopover? We had solved the issue around around the study area and how to track birds outside your study area. Motus helped us do that. But the other issue was the weight of the transmitters and the fact that there were transmitters at the time in 2020 that could go on small birds like thrushes, but they were all battery operated, which meant that they might only last, 8 weeks or maybe 10 weeks. And then the bird is carrying that transmitter for the rest of its life, and you're not receiving any information from it. So these guys, I mentioned these cellular tracking technologies. These guys started their company a few years ago, and they came up with this idea of a solar powered transmitter that they call a life tag. And so it transmits from sunrise to sunset, doesn't need a battery. What it means is it can go on much smaller birds, and it also means it can last potentially the life of the bird. So as soon as I heard about this, I was like, this is it. This is what we're going to do. Contacted got a grant from the MAP Foundation, and went ahead and put the order in and started the process of that. Now, in order to put anything else on a bird other than a leg band, you need a special, we all have federal and state permits for a bird banding station, but you need a special additional permit from the bird banding laboratory to put a transmitter on. So we received training. Here's Dr. David Aborn down in Chattanooga. We received training from him and our guys at Tennessee River Gorge Trust, and Amy Wilms, who's another bander and researcher, to learn how to put the transmitters on. We use what's called a leg loop harness. So we have a really thin, it's called Stretch Magic, that we put around the leg. It attaches to the harness here. These transmitters seem to be better for long distance migrants, versus there are harnesses that are called backpacks that go around the wings. And so we were trained how to do that, and went ahead and applied for our permit. One of the other things you have to be able to do when you're applying for your permit is you have to say, what is your research question? And so we knew we wanted to get this answer around stopover for these thrushes that migrated through. But when we were putting together our proposal, I was like, it'd be great if we were we have a year-round banding station. It would be great if we were able to answer some questions around year-round use of Warner Parks, and not just is Warner Park important for these migrating birds, but for other birds. And so we settled on using a suite of related species. These are all in the thrush family. So thrushes are related to robins and bluebirds. They're big enough birds that they can hold the weight of the transmitter without being impeded. And so, and it also, these five species allowed us to be able to look at, to answer questions throughout the entire year. So we have wood thrushes in the summer, Swainson's thrush, gray-cheeked thrush, and veeries during spring and fall migration, and then hermit thrush. Oops, I was supposed to say winter, that winter here. They're definitely not here in the summer. And so our question was for the wood thrush in the summer, I was curious about fidelity. Are they returning year after year after year? And what sort of habitat are they using here in Warner Parks? And that's really important because wood thrushes in Tennessee are considered a species of concern. And so their populations have declined significantly. And so for us to be able to understand what habitat is important to them, maybe there's something we can do in Warner Parks to help with that. For the Swainson's thrush, gray-cheeked thrush, and veery, we're looking at stopover duration. Are we an important migratory stopover? And I'm also curious just about fidelity. Are they coming back to Warner Parks? Do they remember, like, this is a really great stopover site, and do they come back here? And then for hermit thrush in winter, not summer, again, looking at fidelity. Are they coming back here year after year? And again, the question of habitat use. So that was our overall research question. And we were able to get the federal permit for that. And in the fall of 2020, we went ahead and started. And so On the left-hand side, this is looking from 1982 when the banding station started to 2019. We'd captured a total for these 3 species of 257 birds. This is what we've done so far as just capture. We've been able to capture 49 of these, which it's like 20%. So we're doing actually really good the last couple of years of catching these thrushes. We've captured more Swainson's thrushes and then gray cheek thrushes. This right here, I just want to point out, is really amazing. We had only ever captured 15 veeries previously. This fall, we were able to capture 5 of them. And that, I think, is attributed to the fact that we started a little bit earlier. So we started our banding, instead of starting mid-September, we started at the end of August. And veeries are early migrants in our area, so we were able to capture a few more. So that's really exciting. And lo and behold, we are starting to learn a little bit about migratory stopover. And so it does seem, these are averages and median days, is that the Swainson thrush are spending 4 to 5 days here. The gray cheeks are spending about 9 days here. And the veeries, might be spending a couple of days here. So that was really kind of amazing. So when you think about like the Swainson thrush here, they breed up here in northern US and Canada. The yellow is their migration as they're working their way down to Central and South America. And so as they're moving through, the fact that they're choosing to, come to Warner Parks and spend 9 days here to put on potentially, 25 or 30% of their body weight is pretty amazing to me. We're able to tease this out just a little bit more. So this table up here on the top is looking at the number of days in the fall versus the one on the bottom is looking at spring. And this is not surprising to us, is that generally, and again, our sample sizes are pretty small, but generally the birds in the fall are spending more days at Warner Parks as a migratory stopover versus the spring where they're spending fewer days here. And that's just a general sort of researchers for years and years have believed that during the spring migration, the birds are trying to move really quickly to get to their breeding grounds so that they can claim their territory. So they can kind of take their time in the fall. That's not as urgent, as a lot of it is going to be dependent on weather for movement. But in the spring, they're really trying to be the first on their breeding grounds. And so they're moving through a lot faster. So this sort of meshes with that a little bit. So that's what we had done so far. One thing that happened in the summer of 2021 is that on one of our Motus calls, I had heard from the guys at CTT that they had developed the life tag that has the solar transmitter here. They had developed it so that it had a rechargeable battery, which is this little silver battery right here. And what that meant is that these solar powered transmitters could then transmit 24 hours a day, which is really important for a bird that migrates at night. So as soon as I found out about it, we went ahead and put an order in. The day I got them in the mail, I brought them home and I made the harnesses. And the next day we had a banding session and we were able to put transmitters on 3 Swainson's thrush that very first day with these hybrids. And amazingly enough, one of those birds from that very first day with the hybrid with the battery, it spent 7 days at Warner Parks. 15 days later, it was detected at 1:30 in the morning flying over a receiver station in Costa Rica. So without that hybrid, without that battery that was transmitted at night, we never would have known about that. So this was a bird that presumably, we're thinking it probably didn't fly over here. Our guess, although we don't know until there's more receiver stations, our guess is it may have moved across here or through Mexico as it's working its way down. This generally tends to be the area that they, in Colombia, where they winter. So we were really, really excited about that. And then we had another one. This was a gray-cheeked thrush. So the gray-cheeked thrushes, sorry, I'm going to bounce back. The general thought is that the Swainson's thrushes move in a westerly direction, go down through Central America, and then they're wintering more on the western side of Colombia, versus gray-cheeked thrushes that they believe migrate maybe more down Florida, skip around all the islands, and then they're wintering more in the northern western area of Colombia. And so we did have a gray-cheeked thrush that was doing just that. And so it stayed in our area for 7 days, and then it left. We could tell from exactly when our receiver station could no longer detect it, which was at 6:45 at night. And then an hour and a half later, it was detected at this Bear Hollow wildlife management area. So that meant it was moving at about 60 miles an hour as it was headed, sort of looks to me, straight down towards Florida. So that was really exciting. This year we put more, we continued with our research, put more of those hybrid transmitters on, and we had another Swainson's thrush. This one stayed at Warner Parks for just 2 days. 12 days later, it was detected by 3 receiver stations in Costa Rica. So these guys down in Costa Rica are really, they're busy putting up receiver stations. So you could tell from the detection that it was moving in this southwesterly direction in the middle of the night, just like it's supposed to. Then we had, this is really exciting, we had a veery that we put a transmitter on. It stayed in our area for 5 days, and then 16 days later, it was detected the very north tip of Mexico. And so, what we don't know for sure is, did it move across? Did it go, further west? This, to me, given where the receiver station is, which is actually out in an island north of Cancun, it seems that this bird went directly across the Gulf of Mexico, about as due south as you can get. So that was pretty amazing to see. So those are the foreign detections that we have had from our thrush study. What's kind of amazing about this is that in the 40 years of just banding, we've never had any of our banded birds detected or located or found outside of the United States. And so just in the couple of years of having those transmitters on, we're starting to get these foreign detections. So looking ahead, I'm hoping we can get some larger sample sizes just to sort of build with those average stopover days, just to, the more numbers you have, then the more you can say about that. I'm really interested in looking at body conditions. So when we radio tag a bird, we're looking at their weight, we're looking at their fat, and does that, the amount of fat that they have stored up, does that correlate with how many days they're spending at Warner Parks? And so if it's a bird that just flew in that night and it's really skinny and it doesn't have any fat, maybe that bird is spending 9 days with us, versus another bird that we capture and we didn't know it, but it had already been here for a week and it had already built up a ton of fat, and it's leaving 2 days later. And so that's something I'm hoping we can look at. I'm also really still hoping we get a fidelity for these migratory birds, that we can see that they are coming back to Warner Parks. For the wood thrush, so we've had 52 total captures of wood thrushes before we started this project. We'd had a handful of within seasons, and we had 5 multi-year recaptures. So we knew that there was some fidelity there just based off of the banding, but trying to get a better understanding of that and how long they're spending here. And so we've been able to put transmitters on 12 birds. We've had 16 captures. We had some issues with antennas coming off that we've had to replace on some of these birds, but we've had so far 12 birds with thrushes with transmitters on. And what we've learned so far from this, last year, one of our volunteers and interns found a wood thrush nest, and it was a pair. We had a radio tagged adult second year, after second year female, and a radio tagged second year male that were a breeding pair, and they had built a nest not that far from our banding station. So the fact that two radio tag birds were able to pair up and that they were able to go ahead and build a nest made us feel really good about the fact that the transmitters aren't impeding their normal behavior. So that was really exciting. And then we learned this summer that we had a fidelity. So that second year male, the one that we'd found the nest for, he stayed in the area. So he was here all summer long. He was last detected on October 1st of 2021. We then detected him again with our receiver station on June 4th. He spent the entire summer with us this year and left on October 8th. So that's really exciting because that really confirms fidelity that he's coming back to this. And we're just going to keep our fingers crossed that he comes back next year. Hoping to learn a little bit more again about habitat use, really what is their preference for nesting, and are they successful in their breeding attempts. Finally, for our winter resident, not our summer resident, the hermit thrush, we'd previously had 46 captures, one within season and only 2 multi-years. So we knew that there was fidelity, but again, sample size was pretty low. So far we've been able to capture 10 birds, including this winter. So 10 birds with transmitters. And the first winter, so that was the 2020-21 winter, we were able to radio tag 2 hermit thrushes. And what we learned from that was that they really are spending the entire winter with us, which was something I don't think we were really had really known before. So one of the birds had spent 171 days with us. Another one had spent 105 days with us. And so that was really exciting to say, yeah, we capture them in the fall, and they're spending the whole winter here with us. Last winter, what we were able to learn, we had 3 hermit thrushes that spent the winter with us, and we were able to go out. This right here, this is a Tennessee State University intern, Asia Tanks, and this, what she's holding is a handheld receiver. So we have the receiver stations that are stationary, but we have this handheld receiver where we can go out and we can try to track down the bird. And we try to do that as often as we can, and we have interns and volunteers who help us with that. And what we were able to learn from that is that it seemed like while we banded them and put transmitters on right here at the Nature Center, it seemed like they kind of spread out a little bit because we were sort of consistently finding them in these areas. So that was really interesting to see. So one of the birds stayed here, departed in early March, was here for 147 days. Another one, 164 days, departed on April 21st. This bird departed on April 21st, 2 hours earlier. So that was sort of interesting to us that they departed on the same night. And so so it made us start to, wonder a little bit about the timing of departure. And so again, these were the 2. One departed, it seemed like around 7:30 at night on the 21st. One departed. What I mean by that is that our receiver station stopped detecting them at 9:45 that same night. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with this site. It's called Birdcast. It's through Cornell University, and it is a really fun tool. I love going to it every morning when I wake up. It's the first thing I do. And what it does is it can give you can type in here, this is the migration dashboard. You can type in your county, tells you how many birds migrated through your county that night. it also forecasts out for you the next 3 nights, so you can see, excuse me, if it's going to be a good migration move. So it's like, gosh, I wonder if our birds that departed on April 21st, if there's anything there. And so when we went to birdcast, it had been a really quiet migration, just not a lot of birds moving through. And the very first big night of migration was on April 21st. So that night, birdcast said that over 2 million birds moved through our county that night. And that was the night that these 2 hermit thrushes pushed through, which I think was just, I was a little excited about it. So I reached out to the guys at Cornell to tell them about it. And they said, you know what? We're a bunch of data modeling nerds, and we love the fact that the models that we're creating are correlating with what you're seeing on the ground. Would you go ahead and write something up? And so we did a little guest note about it, about our hermit thrushes here in Tennessee, and that they were the idea that the work that we were doing on the ground was correlating with the work that the modeling work that they were doing at Cornell. So that was really, really fun to be able to connect those dots. So for this winter, again, we're really trying to look at the fidelity question. We don't know yet, but for their winter territory, one of the things when we started to see from the previous year where they were finding them in really consistent areas, from the literature, there were some studies done in Georgia and Louisiana that said, yeah, there is fidelity. So I'm not sure why we're not seeing fidelity, but they were having about 13 to 18% of their birds were returning. So that's something we need to figure out why we don't have that. But there was a study done in Louisiana that was looking at winter territories, and their it seemed like their birds were establishing winter territories. They overlapped a little bit, but again, their winter territories were really small, like about just under 1.5 acres. And for us at the Nature Center, I think that that's a really important message to be able to talk to people about, is here you have a bird, migratory bird, that's coming down, spending the winter. It could potentially be spending the entire winter in your backyard. So what you do in your backyard, native plants, having access to water, having it be safe because there's no outdoor cats, it might really be critically important to these birds if they're deciding to settle down to a really small winter territory. And so that's something that this winter we've got more interns, and we have volunteers. We're hoping to be able to get a little bit better handle on that over the next couple of months. So, and also see if our departure time ties in with any of the modeling that Cornell's doing at Birdcast. So that's where I am on time. So just to sort of summarize a little bit, and then I'm happy to answer questions. You know, I feel like it's only been a couple of years and we have learned so much. So one, that Motus is really complementing our long-term legacy bird banding station work that we've been doing. Again, as I'd mentioned, that the Motus network, it's growing, it's expanding, which I think is just good for everybody who's part of that network. I do think looking at some of the preliminary data, even though our sample size is small, that Warner Parks really could be a really important, not only a migratory stopover site, but an important site for wintering and summering birds as well. Because of those wood thrushes, you know, we feel like the radio tags aren't impeding their breeding. And from some of the detections we've had in Costa Rica and Mexico, it's not impeding their long distance migration. So phew, that always makes me feel better. Our work is complementing some of this modeling stuff, like the guys at Birdcast that they're doing. And that I would say the last big thing is that Motus is just a really great way for us to engage our volunteers and our interns and the public. So when you're walking around with that handheld antenna, everybody has to know what you're doing. And so it's a really fun way to be able to do that. So that's what I have. And I am a quick thank you and shout out to everybody who makes this all possible. And most of all, our fabulous bird volunteers, including my engineering department, Steve Gertner. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And I don't know, Rachel, if...
Okay, I can see the questions, and we have one question that's come through. Thank you, Laura. That was very interesting. I learned so much every time I listen to you. There's one question that says, you said some of the birds are migrating at night. Do you set up traps at night to catch them too?
No, we don't. We don't do that, except for the owl. The northern saw-whet owl is the one that we do band at night. But for all the other migratory birds, you know, the idea is that they are they're flying at night. We're not capturing them. We're not doing it. Most of them are flying. You know, they're pretty up high in elevation, so you know, we wouldn't really be able to capture them. But they are dropping down in the morning and then foraging, and that's when we're able to capture them. So there are researchers who look at, they use, like the birdcast guys, they use radar to be able to actually visually, they can see the movement and can estimate the numbers like birdcast is doing. There's also researchers who can go out, if it's a real quiet place. I can't do it here in my little neighborhood, but you can go out at night and you can listen and you can actually hear. Some nights you can hear the birds as they're migrating through at night. You can hear them vocalizing, they're giving little call notes to each other. So you're able to get a sense of movement. And from the call notes, you can, some people can, I can't, but some people can identify down to species, what species are moving through based on the call notes. I hope that answered that question. Are there any other?
Yeah, I don't see any other that have come through. Anyone typing anything up, please go ahead and ask for questions. I don't see anything.
Well, thank you. Thanks for joining. And I would say, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us at the Nature Center, and I would be happy to, as you can tell, I love this work. I think it's really exciting, and I'm happy to answer any more questions. So please reach out if you have any questions or anything didn't make sense. I'm happy to answer that.
Also, it'll take us a few days probably to get this up and posted, but just be patient. I know that a couple of people were not able to join, and they let me know that they were going to be watching it later. So I think we can have it up in a few days, a week at the most, and then you can watch all of this again, because it was a lot of great information. I can't wait to review myself. So thank you very much, Laura.
Excellent. Let's stop recording.